Check out the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer, the best in the business. It's going to be great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. I'm joined by Avry Lewis-McDougall, Edmonton Oilers writer for the Hockey News. Avry, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Good to be back here again. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. The Stanley Cup final is here Saturday. Florida Panthers, the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers back in the Stanley Cup final, first time since 2006. And they're looking for their first Stanley Cup since 1990. And oh boy, what a matchup it is. But before we get into that matchup, let's talk about Game 6, that Western Conference final. Mm-hmm. I know you were in the building for that. Yes. And Oilers having 10 shots on goal and surviving the Dallas Stars in that third period. I mean, you got to give credit to Stuart Skinner in that game, probably his best game in the playoffs.
No, totally, Jim. That was a game in which, really, for the last 42, 43 minutes, Edmonton was playing prevent defense, which most of the time you would lose. In almost every case of that happening, you lose a hockey game. But Stuart Skinner made so many high danger saves in that game, turning away chances from guys like Miro Heiskanen, Jason Robertson, Logan Stankoven, on and on and on and on. And he was making the save that he wasn't making against LA and against Vancouver, which is a good sign, showing that his confidence is back up to what it was and showing he can be that number one goaltender for Edmonton, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed with how Stuart Skinner has bounced back. And I think he's had that ability all year. And I think, but the thing is, like, people look at it and they say they still doubt him just because it's Stuart Skinner and his history. But the fact that he's 6-2 in his last 8 games, where he's got a 1.81 goals against and .920 save percentage after being pulled in, after game 4 of that. No, after game 3 of that second round series against Vancouver. And, it just reset him and he looks so much more poised in the net.
Yeah, he truly does. And one of the good things about Stuart Skinner is that he's someone who you rarely see him get down on his play, even in games when he lost. The big thing is that he always has the mentality of, I'm going to get it back. I'm going to get the next game back. I'm going to figure it out. And I'll give full credit to the fact that the Oilers this season hired George Mumford, a sports psychologist, who worked with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, who helped Stuart assess his mind, really put him into a good place. So I think the fact that Skinner's mentality has been, I'll get the next game back and not gotten too down bad performances, has a major impact as well too, Jim.
Yeah, and you talk about it, and the guys believed in him. You hear that after the post game, Connor McDavid praising him, all the guys just praising Stuart Skinner, and rightfully so, and the way he's played. But I go into the Stanley Cup final, I think to myself, if the Edmonton Oilers think they're going to win a hockey game with 10 shots on goal against the Florida Panthers, they got another thing coming.
Yeah, no, you're totally right in that. You're going to have to get more shots on Ferry Bobrovsky, far more shots than just 10 to have a chance of winning any game. But I think they have the ability to do that with the transition game. They have the ability to get that top 6 unit going. And also, too, they've been getting contributions from the depth players, guys like Connor Brown, Matthias Janmark, sorry. So if they can get those guys going as well, too, and get more pressure on Bobrovsky, they should be in good shape.
Yeah, and, you look at it, right, and we talk about Skinner. And one more thing on Game 6. To me, that was Connor McDavid's, Nathan MacKinnon moment in the playoffs. Say, I'm willing my team to the Stanley Cup final. I'm taking over, and go ahead and try to stop me, but you're not going to stop me.
Right? Oh my gosh, that first goal where he just went through Miro Heiskanen like he was a beer leaguer, that was just ridiculous. And it shows once again that I know there's a debate on who the best player in the league is. We see it between McDavid, McKinnon, Draisaitl, Kucherov. But to me, it's still Connor McDavid. From that and other plays he's made this postseason, the fact that Connor McDavid is a guy in which, his goals might be down, but he's still out here putting up 20 helpers. So that's why McDavid, to me, is still the best player in the league, Jim.
Yeah, and then, with McDavid, from the outside, you watch it, you say, oh, he had 5 assists here in this game 4. I watched a lot of the Oilers games this year, and especially in this playoff, and I say, all right, he's getting the points, but he's not noticeable. More guys like Draisaitl were noticeable earlier in the rounds, Bouchard. Now Ryan Nugent-Hopkins but in the Western Conference Final, Connor McDavid was Connor McDavid. And I'm like, no, this is the best player in the world.
No. And that's the scary thing, because he finds ways to turn it on when he has to and contribute in other ways. Like I said, like he's arguably more dangerous when he's a playmaker, because you mentioned names. He's able to set up guys like Evan Bouchard, like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, like Zach Hyman. When Connor McDavid is getting everybody else involved in scoring, that's when he's the most dangerous in my mind.
I agree with that. And, the Oilers back in the final again, and Edmonton's going to be rocking. I mean, first the Canadian team trying to win a cup, trying to break the 30-year drought. And in your opinion, like, what do they need to do to beat this Florida Panthers team that a lot of people have pegged as a Stanley Cup winner? They went to the final last year. They have this experience. I know the Oilers have the growing pains too, but what do they need to do to beat this Panthers team?
I think really against Florida, you're going to have to be prepared to play a heavy physical game and get prepared to play a game in which it may not be as up-tempo as you wanted it to be against a team like Vancouver, at times to Dallas. You've got a lot of bodies like Gustav Forling, Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, guys who are okay slowing the game down, making the game heavy, but Edmonton does have the bodies like Sam Carrick, Corey Perry, Evander Kane, to play that game. So be prepared, I would say, if you're Kris Knoblauch, to not be able to play that run and gun style in every single aspect of your game, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so too. And you mentioned Kris Knoblauch. Last time we talked, the Edmonton Oilers are making a coaching change. Jay Woodcroft's out, Knoblauch's in, and the Edmonton Oilers look like that team that went on that 16-game heater. Oh, by the way, it started in New Jersey back in December. Yes. But and they're playing a more patient game. That's what I've noticed, and that's what I took away from talking with the guys in the room that night. McDavid said it. Draisaitl said it. They were like, we're just playing a patient game. Is that something that Kris Knoblauch has brought to this team?
He really has. He truly has brought the belief in playing a patient game for the Oilers. And one thing, too, with Kris Knoblauch is that he's not afraid to tinker with certain things in terms of lineups, like what doesn't work, what does work. He's not going to stick with lines that don't work in certain situations. And one thing I like about Kris Knoblauch is that if things get down, he doesn't automatically go towards the automatic putting together McDavid and Draisaitl on the first line. He knows that you got to bounce on this lineup to have a shot at winning, because previous coaches, I like Jay Woodcroft, but sometimes Jay would be too prone to going towards McDraisaitl on one line when you need a goal or you need some offense. So I like the fact that Knoblauch does say, listen, we need Connor and Draisaitl to be on separate lines to have success. It can't always be, oh, we're down one, we are struggling, those two in a line whenever I need it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that like back in the day with Chicago with Kane and Jonathan Taves. They would try to do that, towards the end of games more often. But I really like the balance. You said it. He's brought, you bring in, obviously Zach Hyman's there. He's been great. RNH up on that line. That line with McDavid has been really good. And then Perry on that line and Kane, Evander Kane. And you mentioned it before, physicality, right? If Evander Kane's able to play in this series, it looks like he can play in game one. He's going to like that physicality, because he did talk about in the last series, not too much physicality, really can't get into it because Dallas doesn't like to do the stuff after the whistles.
No, exactly. And Florida, I mean, we've seen with Florida, we've seen from series one onwards, of course, the whole Sam Bennett thing with Brad Marchand. We saw how Florida can play at times. They're going to be a greasy team. They're going to be that team that'll engage you in the battles in the corners. And Edmonton's got to be prepared to face that in the Cup final. So having guys who know what that's like, who played against that, is going to be key, Jim.
Yeah, and Corey Perry there, and you mentioned Knoblauch and the not afraid to change, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody was wondering if they were going to go back to Pickard after game 3. He stays with Skinner. He keeps it. We're going to play with him because he's playing well. Bad goal, okay, but you know what? I'm going to believe in him. But he takes Desharnais out, and then he puts in Broberg. Perry comes back in the lineup because this is what they got him for. They move around. McLeod, Henry, Carrick, like the little moves that he's been making. He's batting 1,000 right now.
Yeah, no, he really is. And for a rookie head coach, like rookie head coaches to be, I guess, that bold and not be afraid to tinker, it's a really good sign because some coaches would be afraid and have the mentality of, oh, what if it doesn't work? That isn't Kris. Kris is the kind of coach where he says, you know what, I gotta try something new because this isn't working. Be it letting Stewart sit for a couple of games, putting in Kellen Pickard, be it changing the D pairs, be it taking guys in out lineup, be it Adam Henrique or Ryan McLeod. Knoblauch knows that you're in a situation where it's now or never, and with his back against the wall a couple of times, he's known if I don't do something, we're going home.
Yeah, no, exactly. And do you expect the Game 6 lineup to be the Game 1 lineup for the Stanley Cup Final?
It sounds like that's gonna be the possibility. It sounds like it's what Kris is gonna roll with. Really, I think right now it's gonna be that until it doesn't work anymore. And you know what? Hey, it worked against Dallas, and I think it could be very effective against Florida as long as you get pucks on net on Sergei Bobrovsky.
Yeah, no, exactly. We talked about that before. You can't play a Vancouver Canuck game. You can do it every now and then, and they did it. Like they did it every now and then, right? You go back to Game 4 of the LA series where they got outshot. I think LA had like 31 shots. Stuart Skinner had the shutout. But okay, you did it once there, and then you did it once again against Dallas. Maybe you can do it once against Florida, but you can't do it all the time. And we talk about the defense, and Connor's buying in, Leon's buying in, and that PK, the special teams. You have the number 1 power play and the number 1 penalty kill. They're going to make an impact in this series, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. They've killed off 28 straight penalties. And one thing with the Oilers is that they limit on the penalty kill. They limit chances in the slot. You see a lot of active sticks from guys like Ekholm and company. That is such a demonstrative penalty kill, limiting high danger chances, limiting the cross ice passes, making them difficult to get a decent shot on Stuart Skinner, and just harassing guys behind the net. Even though, like, this is the only team you can watch and think you have Edmonton on a 5-on-4 or 5-on-3. It's not a guarantee to score when you're up on a 5-on-3, which sounds wild to say, but those 3 or 4 defenders are making power plays so difficult to get any real good chance on, Jim.
Yeah, no, they do. And we look at that power play, right? And obviously McDavid and Draisaitl play a lot there together, Bouchard, Hyman. I mean, the way they just rotate and cycle, it's really a difficult power play to stop. I know Dallas did it a little bit, but I feel like it's starting to come back again after being dormant for about a couple of games.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cycle. It's just exhausting to defend against Edmonton's power play when you've got guys always moving, always in motion. Guys like Bouchard, Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins. After a while, you can stop it for a game or two, but going to Game 3, Game 4, Game 5, it gets exhausting, especially when you have older defenders. It's tough to stop perpetual motion for a 6 or 7 game series. It's really challenging.
And we talk about their defense and how well it's playing. How much credit, besides to Knoblauch, but how much credit do we have to give to Paul Coffey on the staff as well for getting everybody to buy in and play this way defensively?
No, there's a lot of credit to be given to guys like Paul Coffey and Mark Stewart. These are guys who want their D-men to be a little bit more aggressive, be more confident when it comes to defending, carrying the puck into the offensive zone. I mean, we saw a great example. I know he's already a known offensive D-man, but someone like a Darnell Nurse having even more confidence when it comes to carrying the puck into the offensive zone, creating chances. That is the Paul Coffey effect of saying, don't be afraid to make a play with the puck. Don't be so quick to dump it in. Carry the puck in. Get a shot on net. Try and be that fourth forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nurse, and fair, unfair criticism after Game 3 of that series. But you know what? He's bounced back like Stuart Skinner. He's bounced back in a big way. Look, bad luck on the goal that went off his butt, but off his pants and in. But you know what? He sets up the first goal. He blocks a ton of shots. To me, I feel like he's playing within himself now and not doing too much where he was getting exposed. Again, that's just a player in me. And, again, from the outside, I'm not there in the building, but I feel like he's playing more within himself and he's able to show, yes, I'm a good defenseman when I'm just playing the game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. When you let Darnell Nurse focus on being that big physical D-man who can separate a player from the puck and let him be that offensive forward who can skate like the wind and carry the puck into the zone, and either make the great first pass or get a shot off, that is when he plays best. Don't expect him to be Mr. Everything or try to be that defensive D-man like a Matthias Ekholm is or like a Brett Kulak is. That's not his game. Darnell's game is to get a big crushing hit in or try and get a scoring chance. And when you let him do that, he's amazing.
Right, and it's not fair. I mean, look, it's not fair that to obviously we pick on him because, and not pick on him, but criticize him because of his contract. It's not fair. I mean, they paid him what they paid him.
Yeah,
I take it too. I take it too. Like I'm gonna be honest. I take that money too. But he's living now. He's playing up to that, and he's playing his game. And I think he could be a big factor for the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, absolutely. And I think more when he's played with guys, when he's been on pairings more with guys like the Brett Kulaks, Evan Bouchards, Matthias Ekholms, the guys who let him play his game, this is when Darnell Nurse shines because he's had some big goals in his career. He's that D-man who in regular season, when it comes to 3-on-3, he's almost always that D-man you see sent out to play 3-on-3 because of his ability to get to the net and score. He's had some big overtime winners before in his career. So when people say, and you're right, Jim, the money 9.25, is it a bit much? Yes, but end of the day, I take that all day. What are you gonna say? Don't sign the money? Don't take that contract?
Yeah, exactly. I take the money too, and I would take the criticism. Look, was it a little weird, one word answers and everything? Yeah. McDavid stood up for him. Great. You know what? Hey, you have a right to talk. You have a right not to talk. You know what? Exactly. Do what you got to do. For like I said, from the outside, the way it sounded, I'm like, oh, maybe Kris Knoblauch's going to be bold here and take him out of the lineup. He didn't do it, but good on him for sticking with Darnell Nurse because again, he's quieted a lot of critics right now.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? And Darnell's answers. I'll say Darnell's answers, they weren't great, but I'll give Darnell credit. He faced the media. He came out, answered questions. Maybe it wasn't the best, but he didn't shy away. He stood. I was there in the room, Jim. He stood at his locker. He answered questions. He faced the media.
Hey, and that's all you ask from a player, right? That's all you can ask to face the media, answer the tough questions. Hey, we may not like the answers. So what? Like I said, they have the right to talk. They have the right to give their own answers. You know what? And everybody rolls with it the way. But again, he's really silenced me. I've been one of his critics because of his play and again the contract. But again, the two kind of go hand in hand in this world. But he's really impressed me. He really has, and I'm very impressed the way Darnell Nurse has played.
Yeah, and if he can keep up more of that against Florida, Edmonton should be in really good shape come game one.
Yeah, they really should. How much do you think? Because I was thinking about this before, and when I was doing my preview. How much do you think we're going to see a little bit of that old Battle of Alberta come into play in this one with Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett?
I think we'll see a bit of it. I definitely think we'll see a bit of it, especially when the series shifts back to Edmonton for Game 3. Because Oilers fans haven't forgotten Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. There is still that level of animosity. Even when Florida played Edmonton this season, when Tkachuk had the puck, fans were still booing like crazy. When he was announced, he was still booed out of the building. There is still that animosity towards Matthew Tkachuk and Bennett, so I definitely think you'll see some of it in the series here.
I was talking with somebody earlier today, and we talked about on the Florida side of things, they want to keep it 5-on-5, but I think the Oilers can play with the Panthers 5-on-5. I really do believe it because in the previous series when I was doing my previews, and I would say, oh well, I look at Dallas's roster, the depth is there, they have better depth. I don't know. I think the Oilers' depth can equal any team right now.
Yeah, right now. And a few months ago, last season, that wasn't the case. But now, Edmonton's depth is finding ways to step up and produce. I mentioned Connor Brown earlier. I mentioned Matthias Janmark, who's been one of the better two-way forwards. And I know at times he's a depth guy, but he really should be a top six guy more often, is Dylan Holloway. Dylan Holloway has stepped up, had a couple of big goals in the postseason, been able to get to the net, been that physical presence that the Oilers have wanted to see since taking him out of Wisconsin in the draft. So Edmonton's depth, which a couple of years ago was their Achilles heel, is now a big strength going forward.
Yeah, and I look at it and I say to myself, okay, their depth, they made the right moves. Kenny Hollins pushed the right buttons, got the right players in there. And here we are because of the growing pains, right? Everybody talks about the Florida growing pains and what Florida's gone through. Well, what about the Edmonton Oilers, right? Losing to Vegas, losing to Colorado, the start of this season. Like, they understand now what it takes to win from everybody. And an example I go to is Leon Draisaitl in Game 5 up 3-0, wins a puck battle, probably has a chance to go and take a shot, dumps it in the corner, and plays defense. That's truly buying into understanding what it takes to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, and it was things that maybe this team, you mentioned the losses to Colorado, you mentioned losing to Vegas last year, and even in that weird 2021 shortened season, where in the regional season where Winnipeg beat them in that 4-game sweep. They weren't ready to win yet. They didn't know how to win yet. And you're right, Jim. This team is buying in from McDavid, Draisaitl. This team has now said we have to do whatever it takes to win, if it means doing roles that maybe you're not usually known for.
Yeah, and look, I know when I had Dave McCarthy on the show from SiriusXM and NHL.com, he mentioned the quote from John Tortorella when Tortorella got criticized on ESPN, talking about how, maybe McDavid's just got to tweak his game a little bit to play a little bit more defensively. And I really think Kris Knoblauch's got the best out of him defensively right now. It's like that. We were up there and for the Hockey Hall of Fame. We talk about guys. Ken Hitchcock got Mike Modano to buy in defensively. Feels like Knoblauch's doing the same thing with McDavid. I know McDavid's always been a good player, but the fact now his defense is there makes him even more dangerous.
No, and Connor is bought in to become a solid player in all aspects of his game. And again, this is why I see he's one of the better players, he's the best player in the league. And if Connor McDavid, if I'm Kris Knoblauch, I wouldn't want him blocking shots at all in the Cup final. But if we were to see that, that would just show how much more he's bought in as well.
Yeah, and how much he really wants it, right? Like, if you see McDavid 97 blocking shots, that tells you, he really wants a Stanley Cup. And what would it mean for him in this legacy? Ninth season in the league, first Cup final. Like I said, everybody talks about Florida, and they're ready, expected to be there. Feels like the Edmonton Oilers, their swagger says, "Hey, we were expected to be here too."
Yeah, and this team should have been here a few years ago. This team, I'd be critical about how this team was constructed in the eras of Chiarelli and Ken Holland. But if Connor McDavid ends this season with a Stanley Cup, I think he'll put to bed the idea that, he can't get it done. He can't be a winner. If he goes into his first Cup final and knocks out the Panthers, all those arguments will be dead and gone.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think we can expect what do you think, actually, in Game 1? Slow start, fast start, feeling out process? I know it's a lot of time off between the games, but what do you expect come Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final?
Honestly, I think it'll really be a feeling out process, especially between two teams that only play each other twice a year. I think it's really going to be a feeling out process, but I think you're going to see, after maybe the first minutes or so, Edmonton try to play that fast up-tempo game, to try and take the Florida crowd out of it, to try and make Florida play back on their heels. Because if you're Edmonton, I really feel the Oilers can come out after the first minute or so. They got to find a way to push the pace against Florida in a road building and try to steal that Game 1.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, right? Like, feeling out process. They haven't played each other. The last time the Florida Panthers saw the Edmonton Oilers, let's be honest, the Edmonton Oilers weren't the Edmonton Oilers. They were still pretty bad. Coaching change coming out of it. This is a different Oilers team, and they're not gonna. If anybody expects the Panthers to steamroll them, you got to know the thing coming. You haven't been watching the Oilers, because this team. It feels like it's something special with Edmonton right now to be here, what they've been doing.
Totally. And it's the same thing when I saw a lot of predictions for Edmonton Dallas. I saw a lot of, Dallas in 4, Dallas in 5, Dallas in 5. It's like, yep. If this was the Oilers team back in October, you're probably right. But it's like, you have not been watching how this team's evolved to still assume. I call that series Edmonton in 7. The idea of Dallas winning that series in 4 or 5 I thought was ludicrous, and lo and behold, we saw Edmonton win that series in 6.
And they won 3 straight games against a very, very good Dallas team. And they played their best road game in game 5 of that series.
No, they totally did. And even when I knew that tide was going to turn, seeing Edmonton win a game 1 in Dallas, something they had not done in a playoff series since 2003, that to me said, oh, this is a team that might really have it against the Stars.
Yeah, and look, they've proved it. Again, a lot of guys buying in, power plays clicking, penalty kill, up and down those intangible factors. Yeah, Oilers win this series if.
Oilers win this series if. I'm going to say, ooh, yeah, that's a great question. Oilers win this series if Zach Hyman has at least one multi-point game.
Wow, I like that answer. We haven't even touched on Hyman. 14 goals, leads the playoffs. Great value signing for this team. A lot of people say, criticism, it's probably not the best contract in the league. It's one of them. It's one of them for what he's doing.
Right? I've been a big Zach Hyman guy. I liked his game even back when he was with Maple Leafs. But even I didn't think he would be a guy that could have been on pace to have a 60-goal campaign. No one did. I figured Zach Hyman's going to come in, probably be a 30, 35-goal guy, maybe a 40-goal guy. No one saw him having 54 goals.
No, I don't think anybody saw. And now he's leading the playoffs with 14. And he's always got a nose for the net. He plays. He allows McDavid to be McDavid. Look, for me, again, I'm going to be watching Skinner, how he does. I don't think he has to. I think he just got to stay with himself. I think he's just got to make the saves that he needs to make, and the Oilers are going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a great point how people said how if Stuart Skinner just is okay. Stuart Skinner, he doesn't have to be Dominic Hasek era 1995. He doesn't have to be Hasek from 30 years ago. Just be okay, and Edmonton can win a cup. If Stuart Skinner is just a 900 goaltender, they should be in great shape.
Yeah, with that team in front of them and the way they've been playing. Again, you don't want to get 10 shots on goal, but I think you need to be. And again, you may not score 2 goals on 3 shots, but again, push the pace, play your type. It'll be tough because Florida does not allow you to play your game. But I like what you said. If they can get through that first couple of minutes of game 1 and then maybe try to push the tempo. But we know this team, they're not afraid to be patient. They're really not. And I think for me, that's the biggest key in this series.
Yeah, no, it totally is. I mentioned, I know people might chuckle and say, Florida, the old tropes there, no fans. That's going to be hostile. Florida has shown before in the postseason, it's going to be a hostile building. It's been loud before for prior playoff series. So don't give me that crap about, it's the Panthers, it's going to be nothing. No, that building in Sunrise is going to be a madhouse.
Yeah, it is. Because I was there for game 2 of the Boston series. That place was loud. I mean, it was loud. They were hostile. The Oilers are going to get it. I don't know if it's going to be as hostile as it will be in Edmonton for Matthew and Tkachuk and Sam Bennett, but it's going to be. Look, the Edmonton Oilers are not afraid to play on the road. Neither are the Florida Panthers. And a lot of people say, Florida and Edmonton, and why Edmonton further travel. You're not paying attention because the best player in the world is playing for the Stanley Cup, and that's what you want, and that's what we have, and it's great because the dynamic. Okay, this Barkov, best defensive forward in the NHL. McDavid's the best player in the game. How are they going to match up? And I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know people talk about how, and don't get me wrong, Florida and Edmonton, that is going to be exhausting. It's going to have a toll on players. It just will. But remember, these guys are flying on charter airplanes. They have training staffs that are making sure the bodies are prepared. It's not like you and me flying a commercial to play in these games. They're playing on charter flights with elite training staffs that are going to make sure they're prepared and ready to handle the commute of going back and forth between Alberta and South Florida. So
right, and that's why we have a couple of days in between some of these games because this is the scenario why. you can't just be going every other day with this travel. The body would, even with elite training and elite charter flights, your body would not be able to go every other night. It just wouldn't.
Yeah, no, it's very true, but it's I think it's gonna be fun. I know people talk about what about the ratings? The ratings, they'll be okay. They're gonna get people watching Connor McDavid against Barkov and against Bobrovsky. Like, again, like if you're a Sportsnet, if you're a ABC, ESPN, you want to see McDavid playing for a championship. This is good for you.
It's good for hockey when you have one of your star players, actually multiple star players, playing for the Stanley Cup, because that's what you want. Yeah, I know the NHL's a team game and everybody says teams and, I've been great at the Rangers were there. And all right, yeah, I get it. All right. But when you have star players playing for the best trophy in all of sports, that's special.
Yeah, it's very special. And for those who don't watch on the Oilers games, I know the Oilers aren't on ABC that often, but it's going to be a fun introduction for a certain fan base to see, because, Jim, in Game 6, being on press row, it got to 109 decibels as the clock went down in the final 10 seconds. It was so loud that I could not hear the other member of the media row beside me. I straight up could not hear anything. My hearing literally stopped for a good 10 seconds because it was so loud in there.
I mean, and we're talking, that must have, we weren't around there. We weren't in the building in those 80s when those Oilers were winning Stanley Cups. But I've been in Carolina multiple times. It can get loud there. I've lost my hearing there too. But the fact that this place, this new building, is that loud for the Edmonton Oilers, we know what it's like out in the streets. You feel bad for the visiting coaches, because the street's literally right there. But it's the weight of the world, the weight of a city, a weight of a country. Most of the country will root for them, I hope. My heart really wants to see Edmonton lift the cup. I mean, because I would love to see a Canadian team win. And I think they can do it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's come down, as the playoffs have progressed, it's come down more to the thinking of, they'll get past an LA, Vancouver, and then out to a lot of people thinking, the longer this postseason's gone on, Jim, the thinking has gone from them winning a series or two to them really having a belief that they can win it. And I think they'll get a good amount of support. I know certain markets will not support them, like ones like Vancouver, Calgary, probably Toronto will say not a chance, but you might get some support from places like in Ottawa or Winnipeg, maybe.
Maybe, right? Yeah, but I mean, that place is going to be loud. I can't wait for the scene to shift to games 3 and 4. For the series, but we're not there yet. We're only got game 1, South Florida, Saturday night. It's going to be awesome. Media day coming up on Friday. Avry, this has been so much fun talking about the Edmonton Oilers Stanley Cup final. They're back in it. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so you can find a lot of my stuff on my Twitter or X account on Avry, AVRY, and you can find my stuff on Hockey News on thehockeynews.com.
There you go. Follow the man. He's going to be in Edmonton for all the games of the Stanley Cup final. Follow his work. He does great stuff. And it was always a pleasure to have you on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you in Toronto on the Hockey Hall of Fame weekend. I can't wait to do this again and enjoy the Stanley Cup final, buddy.
No, of course. Thanks, Jim.
Guys, it's been the Full Press Hockey Podcast. Get it? Full Press Hockey on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. I've been joined by Avry Lewis-McDougall of the Hockey News. Guys, enjoy the Stanley Cup final.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.